10 years without the playoffs. Think about that for 1 second. A full decade, a rookie who signed his first contract during that drought could grow up, get through college, and start a career, and the Detroit Red Wings still would not have played a single postseason game. That is the shadow Dylan Larkin has been standing in every single year of his career. He was drafted 15th overall back when the drought was still new, still felt like a rough patch rather than an identity. He was a kid out of Waterford, Michigan, hometown pick, hometown dream, the kind of storyline every franchise wants to build a marketing campaign around. He starred at the University of Michigan before turning pro, and from his very first NHL season, the games came fast and the losses came faster. His rookie year was the last time Detroit sniffed the postseason at all, and he only got 5 games of it before it ended. Every year after that was supposed to be the year things turned around, and every year they did not. Somewhere along the way, staying became its own kind of statement, while other disgruntled stars around the league forced their way out of rebuilding situations. Larkin stayed. He signed an 8-year extension worth nearly $70 million, locking himself into Detroit through what should have been the prime of his career. He took the captaincy. He played through a fractured ankle in a playoff push that ultimately fell short. He became, by every measure that matters in hockey, the face of a franchise that had nothing else to point to. And in June, the captain who wore that shadow longer than anyone finally said he was done carrying it. According to multiple reports, Larkin's agent placed a phone call to general manager Steve Yzerman shortly after the season ended, informing him that his client wanted out. Not a trade rumor, not a leak from an anonymous source trying to stir up attention. A direct request, player to management, asking to be moved. For a franchise that had spent a decade selling patience to its fan base, this was the sound of patience running out. Yzerman, the man who built his entire reputation on discipline and long-term thinking, was suddenly staring down a demand from the one player who represented everything the rebuild was supposed to protect. Larkin was drafted by his hometown team. He became captain in January of 2021, inheriting the same letter Yzerman once wore as a player. He was the face of continuity in a city that had watched era after era of losing, and now he wanted gone. A week after that first call, Larkin's camp followed up with a short list of teams he would be willing to waive his no-trade clause for. Minnesota, Vegas, Florida, 3 markets, 3 very different situations, but one common thread. All 3 were built to win now. All 3 were exactly what Detroit was not. Yzerman's public response, when it finally came, told you everything about the position he was in. Speaking briefly after the 2026 draft, he confirmed the call, confirmed the list, and then drew a hard line. He said there were no guarantees. He reminded everyone that Larkin still had 5 years left on his contract, a team-friendly deal worth $8.7 million a year, the kind of number that made trading him without an enormous return almost impossible to justify. On paper, that is smart roster management. Hold your leverage. Do not panic. Wait for the right offer. But hockey is not only played on paper, it is played by human beings with limited years left in their careers, and Larkin's captain had just told the entire hockey world that he did not believe those years should keep being spent in Detroit. Here is where the story stops being about one player and starts being about an entire organization's identity. Yzerman did not come to Detroit to chase quick fixes. He arrived with a reputation forged in Tampa Bay, where he built a Stanley Cup roster through relentless drafting and internal development rather than splashy trades. He preached the same approach the moment he walked back into Detroit, the franchise where he had once been a player, a captain, and a legend in his own right. Rebuild the right way, he said. Stock the system with prospects. Do not mortgage the future for a fleeting shot at mediocrity. For years, fans bought in, mostly because there was no other choice. The alternative was admitting the plan was not working at all. Yzerman had spent years selling a very specific kind of hope, not the hope of splashy free agent signings, but the quieter, more painful hope of drafting well, developing patiently, and trusting that the losing seasons were building towards something real. Larkin was supposed to be proof that the plan worked, the captain who stayed, the face who believed. Instead, his own captain became the loudest voice questioning whether the plan was working at all. And then, less than 3 weeks after that draft day statement, Detroit made a stunning move of its own. The Red Wings replaced Yzerman as general manager. Reporting since then has pointed directly at the timing. Larkin's trade request is widely believed to have been one of the central reasons the front office decided a change was needed at the very top. Let that land for a moment. The captain who was supposed to be the symbol of the rebuild ended up playing a role in ending the tenure of the man who built it. This is not a story about Larkin torching a locker room or throwing a teammate under the bus. This is quieter and in some ways more brutal. It is the story of a captain who bled for a franchise, who played through injuries, who wore the city on his jersey every single night for over a decade, finally reaching a point where loyalty stopped being enough, and that decision helped topple the very architect of the rebuild he was supposed to be the face of. Since then, the situation has only gotten more complicated, not less. Larkin's trade list, once limited to 3 teams, has expanded. Detroit beat reporters confirmed the Dallas Stars have now entered the picture, a market Larkin reportedly added after watching Columbus and Dallas circle each other over his Team USA teammate, Zach Werenski. That near miss involved a package built around a young defenseman, and it showed Larkin exactly what a serious offer for a national team teammate could look like on paper. But Dallas comes with its own complications, including an unresolved situation around forward Jason Robertson that could make a Larkin deal there far messier than it looks on the surface. If the Robertson situation spirals, insiders have suggested it becomes difficult to picture Larkin agreeing to a move there at all, no matter how tempting a real shot at a Stanley Cup might be. Even the escape route has its own trapdoor. If you're into stories like this, the kind where one quiet decision ends up toppling an entire front office, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. There is a lot more of this coming. And that is the pattern with every single team on this list. Minnesota has long been floated as an ideal fit given Larkin's connections and playing style, but their own cap situation is far from simple. Vegas has won recently and can create some financial flexibility, but insiders question whether the assets they could offer would actually move Yzerman's replacement to say yes. Florida looks like the obvious dream destination for a player desperate to finally taste a real playoff run, but with a roster that deep and that expensive, it is difficult to see where Larkin's contract would even fit without pushing someone else out the door. Every door Larkin looks through leads to another negotiation just as complicated as the one he is trying to escape. Meanwhile, the front office insider closest to the situation has been blunt about where things stand. Larkin has 5 years left on a contract that will only look more team-friendly as the salary cap rises around the league. Detroit currently sits with roughly $19.5 million in cap space this season, and that number is projected to balloon past $63 million by 2027. That kind of flexibility means Detroit does not have to move Larkin out of desperation. They can wait, they can be patient, the same word that built this entire rebuild in the first place, and the same word that pushed Larkin to ask for a trade to begin with. There is a cruel irony sitting at the center of all of this. The value of patience is exactly what made Larkin want to leave, and it is exactly what is now keeping him stuck. And there is a clock running on top of all of it. Larkin turns 30 on July 30th, 30 years old, still without a single trip past the first round of the playoffs, still without any certainty about where he will be wearing a jersey when training camp opens in September. For a player who helped Team USA win gold at the Winter Olympics in Milan back in February, tasting real, meaningful winning for the first time in years, going back to a rebuilding roster that cannot even promise him a return date feels less like patience and more like punishment. Some captains ask for a trade and it barely makes news. This one helped end a general manager's tenure. Whatever happens next, whether it is Minnesota, Vegas, Florida, an expanded list that somehow includes Dallas, or a fourth option nobody has reported yet, one thing is already true. Dylan Larkin did not need to throw a single punch, call out a single teammate, or say a single public word of criticism to shake the foundation of the Detroit Red Wings. All he had to do was ask to leave, and the entire plan Steve Yzerman spent years building around him started coming apart from the inside. That is what happens when the face of your rebuild stops believing in it. Think about how quiet this whole thing has actually been. No press conference meltdown, no viral locker room video, no shouting match caught on camera, just one private phone call in early June, followed by a chain reaction that ended with a franchise legend losing his job and a captain still waiting months later to find out where he will be playing hockey in the fall. Sometimes the loudest earthquakes start with the smallest tremor. And somewhere in Waterford, Michigan, a kid who once dreamed of nothing but playing for his hometown team is now caught in exactly the kind of front office chess match he spent a decade trying to help Detroit avoid. He gave the organization everything he had for 11 seasons. The goals, the captaincy, the injuries he played through, the losing seasons he never once publicly complained about, until this one phone call changed everything. Now, Detroit has to answer a question no front office wants to face in the middle of the summer. Do you trade the best captain this franchise has had in a decade, or do you spend one more season hoping he changes his mind about a team that still has not given him a single reason to? Whatever the answer turns out to be, one thing is already certain. The Dylan Larkin era in Detroit either ends soon or it becomes something neither side ever wanted it to be.